All right, so today we're diving into BlockDAG. This crypto project, it's gotten some attention, but it's also kind of raised some eyebrows, let's say. So we're going to try to figure out if BlockDAG is legit, or if it's something you should probably steer clear of. And we've got an interesting story to help us do that. Someone who invested early, they put in $35 during the stage 2 pre-sale and ended up with 24,000 BDAG tokens, which is pretty wild because right now, that could be worth over $1,200. Talk about a potential payout, right? So is this a genius move or just plain luck?
Well, it's definitely a fascinating case. At first glance, BlockDAG had some pretty classic red flags, kind of you often see with those pump and dump schemes. But then they actually hit some big milestones since then, so it's a bit of a head scratcher.
Yeah, let's dig into those red flags first. I mean, fake endorsements from Elon Musk and Warren Buffett. And they weren't even like regular fake endorsements. These were AI generated. That's some next level stuff, right?
Yeah, it definitely makes you raise an eyebrow. And it kind of highlights a big problem in crypto. All this focus on hype instead of actual substance.
Mm.
Like they're trying to trick people with these fake endorsements, make them think it's legit, play on that fear of missing out.
Right, and it wasn't just those endorsements either. They had all these paid articles and fake blog posts, poising the project to the moon. Doesn't that feel kind of manipulative?
Oh, absolutely. It's like they were manufacturing this whole sense of excitement, trying to create that FOMO, that fear of missing out. A truly solid project shouldn't need to resort to those tactics. Their work should speak for itself, right?
Makes sense. And then there's the whole thing about the crazy returns they promised, 50 to 200%. That's a huge red flag, isn't it?
Yeah, that kind of return should make anyone skeptical. It's important to understand how real crypto projects grow. Sustainable growth, it's usually much more gradual. When you see those massive percentages being thrown around, it often means it's a pump and dump scheme. Basically, the creators, they inflate the price artificially, get everyone excited, and then poof, they disappear with all the money.
So red flags all over the place. But the person we're talking about today still went for it. They still decided to invest. Why? What made them take the risk?
Well, it's not like they just jumped in without thinking. Even with all the hype, there were a few signs, hints that maybe BlockDAG was different. For one, the team, they were actually releasing updates. Things like the X1 Miner app and the Alpha Testnet Explorer, they are making real progress, which is more than you can say for a lot of those scam projects.
So there was some actual substance behind the smoke and mirrors.
Not completely smoke and mirrors. What's interesting is that they were also kind of transparent. They openly talked about how they were solving this parent gap issue. It's this thing with their DAG architecture. You might be wondering, what is the parent gap issue? Well, it's basically how transactions get confirmed in a DAG network. And solving it is huge. It makes the network more stable and secure.
So they were willing to get technical. That's usually a good sign, right?
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
It shows that they weren't just trying to impress people with fancy words. They were focused on building something that actually works. And another thing that was interesting was the community they were building. They had active Discord and Telegram channels, even a referral program. These can be signs that people are genuinely interested and that the project is gaining traction.
Okay, so we've got active development, some technical transparency, and a growing community. But were those good signs enough to outweigh all those initial red flags? Well, things took a pretty wild turn.
That's where things get really interesting. BlockDAG's presale ended up being a massive success. They raised over $173 million. And the price of their BDAG token, it went up a crazy amount, like 2,240% from stage 1 to stage 2. That's a lot of people putting their faith in them. Hard to ignore that kind of investor confidence.
Wow, 2,240%. So
Okay.
even with all those red flags, people were still throwing money at this project. What do you think changed their minds? Was it just that fear of missing out?
Well, FOMO definitely plays a role in crypto, but I think there's more to it than that. BlockDAG actually started delivering on their promises, which is rare, especially for projects that lean so heavily on hype at the beginning.
So what did they actually deliver?
Well, they launched their Alpha Testnet, which meant that developers and users could actually test the network, see how it works in a real-world setting. They also finished phase 1 of their DAG-based blockchain. That's a huge technical milestone. And they even introduced some new features, like fee customization and smart contract verification.
So they were putting their money where their mouth is.
Yeah, exactly. They were walking the walk, not just talking the talk. And then they started announcing these partnerships. They teamed up with Inter Milan, that's a big deal in European football. And then they partnered with Alex Pereira, a UFC champion. Now, these partnerships, we should always be cautious about them, make sure they're actually meaningful, but they did give the project a sense of legitimacy.
Okay, so the pre-sale is a hit. They're hitting technical milestones, and they're landing these high-profile partnerships. It's like they completely flip the script.
It's pretty amazing turnaround. And it brings up a really interesting question. Can a project that starts out, let's say, ethically questionable, actually become something trustworthy?
That's a great question. I mean, they're obviously not just a rug pull scam. But how do we weigh those early tactics against their progress now? How can anyone, even someone watching this, figure out if this is a legitimate opportunity or a risk they shouldn't take?
That's where due diligence comes in. You got to go beyond the hype, the surface level,
Mhm.
and really dig into the fundamentals of the project.
Okay, so what does that actually look like? What steps should someone take to evaluate a crypto project, especially one with a mixed history like this?
First, you got to look at the team. Who are these people? What's their experience? Have they done this before? You want to see a team that can actually make their vision a reality.
So we're not just looking for anonymous developers hiding behind fake names.
Nope. Transparency is key. Next, you want to take a close look at the project's white paper. That's the document that outlines their goals, their technology, their roadmap, all of that. Don't just skim it. Really read it critically. Does it make sense? Do they address the potential challenges and risks?
So we're looking for substance over hype,
Exactly.
a clear plan, and a realistic view of what could go wrong.
Right. Then there's the code. Is it open source? Has it been audited by independent experts? Open source code means anyone can look at the technology. It makes things transparent and helps identify any potential vulnerabilities.
So it's like you can check under the hood and see how the engine works.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. And don't forget about the community. What are people saying about the project? Are developers actively involved? Are there good discussions happening online? A strong community can be a really good sign. It shows that people believe in the project.
So it's about gauging the overall excitement and support.
Yeah, exactly. Now let's think about BlockDAG specifically. We've talked about those early red flags. But their progress since then has been pretty impressive. The development, the transparency, the community engagement.
So it's kind of a mixed bag, but it seems like they're building something real, and they've definitely gotten people's attention. Now, I know BlockDAG is built on this DAG technology, which is different from a traditional blockchain, right? Can you explain what makes DAGs special and why everyone's so excited about them?
Okay, so a DAG, it's basically a different way to structure data. It lets transactions happen in parallel instead of one after another like in a blockchain.
So transactions can happen at the same time. Instead of waiting for each block to be added to the chain, that sounds like a big advantage, especially for things that need to be processed quickly.
Exactly. That parallel processing makes things faster. And it means the network can handle more transactions, which is a big problem for traditional blockchains.
So it's like a whole new way of doing things, a whole new approach to blockchain technology.
Yeah, and BlockDAG is just one example. There are other projects using DAGs in different ways. We're still in the early days of this technology. We don't even know the full potential of it yet.
It's like a whole new frontier.
It is. And that's why projects like BlockDAG are so interesting. They're pushing the boundaries, trying new things. It's too early to say if they'll succeed or fail.
So what about our listener who took that early gamble on BlockDAG? What's the takeaway for them?
Well, they're still in the game, that $35 investment. It could be worth a lot more if BlockDAG keeps going like this. But crypto is volatile. It's unpredictable. Nobody knows for sure what will happen.
They said they're cautiously optimistic, which seems like a good way to be, right?
Yeah, it's a smart approach. And it brings us back to that idea of due diligence. Even if a project looks good now, you have to stay informed, keep track of their progress, and be prepared for things to change.
So even though BlockDAG seems to have turned things around, it's not a guarantee.
Right, nothing is certain in crypto. The only thing that's constant is change.
And that change can happen really fast.
Absolutely. That's why it's so important to stay informed, think critically, and be careful with your investments.
This deep dive has been quite the ride. We started with all those red flags, then we saw some real progress, and now we're talking about due diligence and the potential of this whole new technology.
It's a good reflection of the crypto world in general. It's exciting, it's challenging, and there's always an element of uncertainty.
So, before we wrap things up, what's the one thing you want our listeners to remember about BlockDAG and about their investments in general?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, those early red flags, they're hard to just brush aside. But at the same time, it does seem like they've shifted gears. And they're actually building something now.
I think the main takeaway here is that even when a project starts showing some positive signs, there's always a risk involved. Past performance doesn't guarantee anything for the future.
Right. It's like they say, Past results are not indicative of future returns.
Hmm.
So what advice would you give to someone who invested early in BlockDAG, like our listener did? What should they be watching for moving forward?
Stay informed. That's the biggest thing. Don't just assume everything's going to be smooth sailing from here on out. Keep a close eye on their roadmap. Are they hitting those milestones they set? Are they actually delivering on what they promised?
So basically, see if they continue to walk the walk. Yeah, exactly. And pay attention to the community, too. Is the excitement still there? Are people actually using the platform? If the community starts fading away, that's not a good sign. It could mean the project is losing momentum.
So we need to look beyond just the price of the token.
Right, it's about the whole ecosystem.
Speaking of which, what about those partnerships? How can we tell if those are real collaborations or just for show?
Good question. Look for real results from those partnerships. Are they actually using BlockDAG's technology? Are they building new things together? If it's just a logo on a website, it's probably not that meaningful.
So basically, substance over appearances. I think that's a good rule of thumb for any crypto project.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And don't forget about diversification. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Spread your risk across multiple projects.
That's good advice for any investment, not just crypto. So it looks like BlockDAG is a pretty unique case study. It makes us think about trust and whether a project can redeem itself and how to evaluate all of this in such a fast-changing world.
It shows you that the crypto world is full of surprises. Things can change quickly. Projects can evolve, for better or for worse. The important thing is to stay informed, keep learning, and think critically.
And probably the most important thing, never invest more than you can afford to lose.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, that about wraps up our deep dive into BlockDAG. We hope you found it helpful. And to our listener who invested early, good luck on your crypto journey. Remember, knowledge is power. Stay curious and keep exploring this fascinating world of cryptocurrency.